And out of this, the Supreme Court's conservative majority signaled Tuesday they may give the green light for a citizenship question on the 2020 census. CBS News' Nicole Killian filed this report from the Supreme Court.
Protesters gathered outside the Supreme Court as justices heard 80 minutes of arguments about the Trump administration's plan to add a citizenship question on the 2020 census. U.S. Solicitor General Noel Francisco argued for the government. He said it's reasonable for the question to be included during an exchange with Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Sotomayor said it's not been a part of the survey, which is where he reinstated it since 1950. Francisco responded, the secretary acted well within his discretion when he determined that reinstating the citizenship question would provide the best evidence of citizenship.
Challengers say the question could lead to millions of people not responding to the census, and that could affect how federal money is allocated and how many representatives each state gets in Congress.
So the census is the basic statistical backbone of everything that we do as a country, and we can't afford to get it wrong.
The ACLU's Dale Ho argued for the defendants.
It might not seem like a big thing to you and me, but a lot of people are concerned, and particularly with this administration, that giving out that information could be used against them.
Supporters of the government claim that won't happen.
It doesn't ask you whether you're in the country legally or illegally. It simply asks, are you a U.S. citizen?
The High Court is expected to issue a ruling in June. Nicole Killian, CBS News, the Supreme Court.
This could have far-reaching implications, so Tom Wolfe joins us. He is counsel with the Democracy Program, which focuses on redistricting and the census. He joins us from our D.C. bureau. Tom, thanks for your time today. Just tell us about what each side says is at stake here and how the census is used by the government for those who may not be aware.
Sure, and thanks for having me. The plaintiffs who are challenging the citizenship questions say that basically everything is at stake. We use the census to do a number of things, but the key constitutional reason is to make sure that everyone is counted so that every state receives the degree of representation that it should receive in Congress. That's a huge systemic problem. On the other side, the government is basically arguing that Secretary Ross can do whatever he wants to do with the census, regardless of what the Constitution says or the Census Act says. And so for them, this is really just about letting Secretary Ross do what he wants to do.
As we mentioned, the court does seems likely to allow the citizenship question. How do you expect, if this does play out, that impacting census records, census numbers, and the actual raw data?
The facts of this case show very clearly that if a citizenship question is added, millions of people are not going to stand up to be counted. That could have ripple effects on congressional apportionment, taking away seats not just from blue states like California and New York, but red states like Texas and Florida. Basically any place in the country that has seen a population growth over the last decade, mainly attributable to non-citizens, is in the crosshairs here to lose seats or federal funding.
And to be clear, millions of fewer people will participate because of legal status, being in the country illegally, not wanting the government to kind of have their name and address and be aware of that?
Basically, yes. In this kind of environment that we have now with rigorously xenophobic, anti-immigrant politics, rhetoric, and action, people are legitimately concerned that if they stand up and say, I'm not a citizen, that they're going to be retaliated against. The important thing to know that, however, is that doing that would be illegal. That is, retaliating against them would be illegal. And if folks chose to do that, to use this information against them, there'd be a strong legal response in place to try to protect people.
And to be clear, the government says, hey, we're not going to take any of those steps. We simply want to add this question to see who is and is not a citizen. But play this out for us. If you have millions fewer people fearful to say that they are not a citizen, but they're in the country, what then does that do to redistricting after 2020? Or how does it determine how much money goes to various, locations?
It has huge implications. Look, the number one reason why we perform the census is because the Constitution tells us we need to know about every single person in the country, where they are, what their numbers are. If you don't have that count, you can't allocate congressional seats the right way. You also can't redistrict at the state level. Now, the government has claimed we need this to enforce the Voting Rights Act, But 3 courts have already found that that is a pretext. In other words, it's a false reason for why the citizenship question was added. Ultimately, we don't know why Secretary Ross wanted to add this question, but what we do know is this. Adding it would be a disaster as a practical matter, and would also be a disaster as a legal matter, because it is both unconstitutional and it's a decision that's been made without the kind of transparency that Americans need and expect from our government agencies.
All right, well, we appreciate your views on this. Tom Wolfe, thank you very much for your time.